a deep joy and happiness that isn't conditioned by how things are going. In other words, it's just an abiding joy and happiness that comes from being in the center of where you're supposed to be and doesn't rely and depend on anything outside. Those are called the four virtues. Sometimes it's also called activating inherent wisdom, activating one's own inherent wisdom. So the exercise, although it's very quiet and you're not, quote, doing anything in terms of normally working out, this quieting of the mind, the stilling of the thoughts, is actually considered an exercise. And it's an exercise that strengthens or activates and strengthens one's inherent wisdom. And so it's a little deceptive because on the outside it appears as if there's nothing going on. And sometimes this is also called, ironically, nothing going on. So dhyana, you could say, is nothing going on, or sometimes called doing nothing. But it doesn't mean a blank zoning out of doing nothing, but it means an energizing of the deep inherent capacity of the mind to know and to understand and see things clearly, which paradoxically is activated not by thinking and grasping and calculating, but rather through quieting, calming, stilling. So this is the paradox at the core of this, that the ancients, the text that they recorded this in, report an experience of discovery that the highest capacities of the human being and the highest capacities of our mind, and they use the word mind to encompass this whole thing, is very profound and deep, much more so than we're using it now. And it's activated or found through a quieting or stilling of focused concentration. So this is why sometimes this exercise is called concentration, but the concentration, again, is deceptive. The concentration is merely a trick that we employ to calm the mind in order to activate its far reach. So in the Avatamsaka, it says, what this activates is prajna, or pana, or insight, or wisdom. And this wisdom, when activated, everywhere examines and observes, yet is forever still. So this is the way it's stated. The activated wisdom then is able to observe not just your immediate situation or not just your own thoughts and feelings, but can take stock of a vast, huge reach, including what they call the entire Dharma realm, the nature of reality. It can encompass and observe that, and yet it is forever still. So this movement stillness, if you want to call it a dynamic tension or a paradox, a blending of opposites into a whole, is at the heart of what we're doing here. So let's go back to why we do this particular exercise when you could do it, and you're expected to do it 24/7, walking, standing, sitting, lying down. That's true dhyana. It's not something you enter when you cross your legs and sit like this, and then when I hit the bell or you get up, you leave it. But rather, the real dhyana is called neither entry nor exit. So it's a total transformation of your being to be in a state of consciousness that's always like this. The sitting meditation practice is kind of like a gym workout to sort of get the basics of trying to gather back in the mind that has run wild. Sometimes it's called the monkey mind. So this innate capacity of inherent wisdom, although fully present and complete in each of us, is not being used because it's scattered, it's running wild, it's driven by emotions and feelings and thoughts and habits and all sorts of stuff. It's really something like a hurricane or a tornado in the way it's normally allowed to just ramble and run. So to begin the practice of activating that inherent wisdom or that inherent power, one has to, and they say, bring the 10,000 things back to one. So the 10,000 things are all the thoughts, feelings, and turmoil and whatnot. And you start to bring those back to one. And this is called Yixian, meaning one-mindedness or single-mindedness. Okay? Now, if you understand the purpose of bringing the 10,000 things back to the one is simply to bring that observing innate capacity into a focus where it isn't scattered and therefore allowed to operate at its fullest, then you can see that all the meditation techniques, all of the meditation methods, or the koans or gungans, meditation topics, all of these are nothing more than expedient devices that have no intrinsic meaning in themselves. Okay, there's nothing special, holy, sacred of one over the other. They're just all clever devices that are put forward to try to, if you want to use the language, trick the mind into singleness, or to use it as a tool to gather the 10,000 things back to one. So that's why it's sometimes called dingli in Chinese, meaning stopping or fixing power. And sometimes in another tradition it's called shamatha, part of shamatha vipassana, which means the stopping, the quieting, the fixing. So the first stage that we'll talk about tonight, really very beginning stuff, is the methods for fixing or stopping or 10,000 things back to one. So what do? It's very simple. You focus on one thing without any other diversion or any other concentration. Just bring your mind and attention to that one thing. So now you'll see, if we have the physical posture correct, because where the minds and thoughts and everything run is through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. First of all, the 5 sense organs are the areas of outflow, and this is the word that's used, outflow. The outflow of the energy goes out through the sense organs to the sense objects, and we get mixed up in this dust, and that's the ordinary kind of turbulent existence. So you're, in a sense, it says gathering back the 6 sense organs. By gathering them back and stilling them, you then bring their energy into a higher level of concentration and focus. And by doing that, you could say it's like a magnifying glass brings light and can bring it to a single focus and cause a burning, penetrating, or like a laser. Or you can think of it as a parabola. A parabola is able to take in all the different sounds, bounce them off a curved surface, and bring them to a single point of concentration. Now, what's parabola? Anybody know what a parabola is? Who watches football? So in the football games, when they're trying to figure out what everybody's saying, they have these little round discs, and they point it, and the sound comes in, and the angles reflect to a single point called the focal point. They put a microphone there, and you can eavesdrop. You can also use them to sled down the hills in the winter. That's what we used in Wisconsin. It's the shape of those. We're going to say what a parabola was? Do you know? What? Right, a curved disc. The biggest ones are trying to listen to extraterrestrial things out in space. So you see these big, they're called radio telescopes, and the smallest ones are used at football games or by spies and stuff like that. So in a sense, focus concentration brings the discursive sounds to a single point or single focus. I'm using a parallel here. Doesn't matter what you use in terms of a method. The trick is not the method. Okay, let me repeat. There's no special method. I've watched this with my teacher for years. He will go someplace, he'll give a talk, and he'll give, look, when you sit in meditation, recite the name of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Just do Namo Guan Shi Yin Pusa. Namo Guan Shi Yin Pusa. Everything's okay, no problem. So everybody's Namo Guan Shi Yin Pusa. Pretty soon, business, love, romance, jobs, everything Namo Guan Shi Yin Pusa. It's just single-minded focus. And then, as they're doing this, they figure out they can think over the top of that. So the mind is really tricky. The mind will think, oh, you're trying to focus. Well, go ahead. I can multitask while you're focusing. You can recite Guanyin name Pusa, you can blah, 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 but I'm going to still do into all this false thinking. Watch. And it's amazing. It's like a 3-ring circus. So it can happen. And then people think, oh, this Guanyin thing is really weak, didn't work. So my teacher come back in a year and people say, can you give us a better method? This one doesn't work. And the master would say, well, okay. I mean, he was being expedient with inexpedience. They say, Omi tofu. Oh, Nian fo han hao. That's really good. So people, Omi tofu. And so for a couple weeks, they were getting deeper focused concentration. And what happens? The monkey mind goes, oh, you just switched topics. You can do Guanyin and Omi tofu together, and I can still fall asleep. And so they come back and they say, come on, give us a real method. And finally, he'd have to tell them the secret is with you, not in the method. The secret is in your mental application, not in the outside device you're using. So when your mind is focused, that's the efficaciousness, not what you're using to focus it. And they couldn't believe that. They were doubtful. And they think, well, so-and-so says for 150 they'll give me a secret, da-da-da. And they said, okay, go ahead, try it. But you have to understand, in this technique that's being used here, you're really using poison to fight poison. So whatever method you pick up is just to calm the mind. It doesn't have anything. The effectiveness is like, it says, Ishin Bulan, single-minded without any confusion whatsoever. One mind unconfused is the magic. And there's wonderful stories told of the tradition, people reciting the mantra wrong. You know, it's maybe Namo Guan Chiryan Pusa, and they're going, Guanyin Pasa. Guanyin Pasa. It doesn't mean anything, it's wrong. And they have this awakening experience. Why? Because they sincerely recited it without any other thoughts. And when the other thoughts stop, that very stopping is enlightenment. That's the trick. So I want to tell this beforehand, because there's no special method. It's not like one's better than the other. Some of you are using, how many of you are using methods now of meditation practice? Okay, I'm not even going to ask you what they are. And don't ask me if they're not working, what should I do? Work them harder with your application. There's nothing magic about them. Okay, so that being said, when you sit in this posture, you notice the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, all come down into a very focused Vajrasana posture. So in that sense, you're already gathering in the body. And then last week we talked about how you gather in the breathing, and you let the breathing happen very deeply and naturally, sinking down to here, so that the breathing takes care of itself, gradually calms and slows as your metabolism slows and calms as you're bringing your focus of attention down here. Now, of course, then, as you do this, you will discover that the mind goes into banana gear, what I call banana gear. It goes bananas. It just starts activating even more. And why? Think about it. Normally, you're going out through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue. You're scattering your energy that way, so it feels normal to you to be in this sort of blitzed out state. When you stop it, all that energy returns and it doesn't know what to do. And so on the mind ground, it gets really activated. It's like if you stop shopping at the mall outside, it still wants to shop, and it's going to go inside. And it's going to run all over your consciousness looking for things to play with. Memories, dreams, reflections, fears, emotions. It'll call them all up nonstop. Very powerful. Now here's where you need the method then to bring your attention back to a single-minded focus. And by doing that, they stop by themselves. They have no power except the power you give to them in attending to them or trying to repress them. But if you don't attend to them and you don't repress them, they rise and fall by themselves because they're just conditioned dharmas, like dreams, illusions, bubbles, and shadows that come and go naturally. They have nothing to them. But we don't know that. We attend to these things and we try to repress them, and therefore we lose the ability to bring the mind into this stillness and activate its wisdom. So, what do? You find a method. You can recite Namo Amitabha, or you can recite Amitabha, or Amitabha, 4 characters. You can recite Namo Guan Chiryan Pusa, or Guanyin Pusa, and I'll show you how to use it. Or you can use a 6-character mantra, which is one I have used for a long time, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. These are all just recitation techniques that you focus your attention on, and we'll talk about how to do that. that when you bring your attention to that focus, when things start to calm, then this wisdom, this insight, starts to open up naturally by itself. You don't have to seek the enlightenment. You don't have to seek the wisdom. You simply have to stop what's interfering with its natural manifestation. It wants to naturally manifest, but we stop it. We cover it over with our scatteredness. So this technique, by stopping the scatteredness, allows it to just naturally manifest by itself. That's the wonderfulness of it. There's nothing to seek. It just wants to bubble up by itself, but we keep pushing it down through our false thoughts and attachments and grasping. Okay? So, if you're using it in a way, you get the posture. It's very important to have the posture. Let the breathing relax. And then if you're going to recite, there's two ways you can do it. First way, the way not to do it, this is not a race. And you don't get more merit and virtue in Kung Fu if you recite a lot. Like, well, if I recite Guanyin Pusa a lot, whoa, that's really powerful. When you start doing that, you're just freaking out. You're getting hyped. And all the benefits of the calming are gone now. Okay? So, recite it quietly and softly internally. Now, in training for this, sometimes we have sessions where we're practicing this, say, Amitabha or Guanyin. You circumambulate or walk outside very slowly in a file, and you just recite aloud. And somebody's hitting a bell and a fish, and the whole group, you just put your palms together like this, and you're walking. It's Namo Guan Shi Yin Pu Sa, Namo Guan Shi. And you just go like this for about a half an hour. Then you come into the hall, and you all sit on your cushions, and you put your into the lotus position like this, and you again recite Namo Guan Shi, and very quietly like this. And then they hit the fish, and you sit quietly for a half an hour, the third half hour, and you're reciting internally now. So you've gone from walking, moving, to sitting, reciting, and just to sitting with quiet internal reciting. And this is a very good beginning training practice because it starts to get you into, from the outside, to the sitting, to the quiet. So for what we're doing here, we're not doing the walking. We're just simply doing the sitting. So then you practice reciting by yourself. You don't even have to move your lips. You get the posture, the tongue curls slightly to the top like we talked about, the whole body relaxed. And you just quietly recite, bringing your attention all to those syllables, Ami Tofo, or Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om. And you bring your recitation, and here's the trick, again, you bring your recitation not from here and from here, even from your heart, down to here. It's as if everything's taking place down there. The recitation's taking place down there. The breathing is dropping down there. Your energy is dropping down there. There's nothing else going on except a total oneness focus on the quiet recitation of those sounds. You just stay on them again and again and again. It's almost like when I watched some of my little nieces and nephews when they were babies, they'd get a sound and just go, uba, 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 or, whatever it was. Some new sound like, baba, baba, da, da, baba, da, da, baba. And they would enter this samadhi. And they just go for a long time, just rocking back and forth. And that's a kind of what we're doing here. I mean, it's that simple. It's almost childlike. Forget all the clever calculations about prajna wisdom being something metaphysical. It's actually very, very simple. Stop the mad mind, and it manifests by itself. So you're actually, in a childlike way, simply losing yourself into that focus, concentration, recitation. Lose yourself in it. There's no before or after. There's no inside or outside. There's no today or tomorrow. There's nothing to think about or worry about. Your cell phone, everything's down and done. And nobody can find you here, wherever you're sitting. And for that moment of time, you lose yourself into that single-minded oneness and just let it do its thing. Set time aside each day and just go there without any other thoughts. Don't keep a notepad with a pen to write down things when you get enlightened or anything. Just bring it down. Just bring it down and let it sit there. And whatever thought arises, what? Now people say, smash it. No, you don't smash it. Well, look at it. It might be enlightenment. No, you don't do that either. When thoughts, feelings, emotions arise in this state, you bring your concentration back again to Om Mani Padme Hum. You don't pay attention to it. So, between giving into it and going after it, or saying, oh, I'm not supposed to think, I'm going to repress it, there's a third possibility, merely observing. So you merely observe it. You don't attach to it and investigate it, and you don't try to push away. You just bring your concentration back to that center, and it will, by itself, rise and fall and be gone. And of course, then another one will come. This is like waves. But the method is the same. Each time, you bring yourself back to this concentration. Okay? That's the exercise. It's brutally simple. And I say brutally because it's so simple, but when you actually then go in to play with your mind this way, the mind will, excuse my language, give you hell. Because it wants to be busy, outflowing, and going. This is its habit. It's used to this. It thinks that that's you. If I don't do this, there's no me. And then you start getting all hyped without realizing true self is the quieting of this, not the activating of this. Okay? So, now one way you can do this, and I'll take it to the next level, is you can layer the sound over your breathing. If you want to do it in a more yogic kind of way, where you're not just letting it be arbitrary, how fast or how slow you recite, so you can say, let's do the Om Mani Padme Hum. As you're sitting there, the first syllable Om would be your inhale. And then Ma would be when you exhale. Ni, inhale. Pad, exhale. Me, inhale. Om. So you've gone in a circle. In, out, in, out, in, out. Na, Om, Mani, Padme Hum. Now, very important, let your breathing direct the sound. Don't try to control it. Don't make your sound direct your breathing, or you'll get uptight. I'm saying this because all of you are pretty smart people, and this is what smart people do. When I have people that aren't so smart, like I teach this to kids, they get it right away. When I teach it to smart, educated people, they think, I will rule my breathing, you know? And what they do is, Om, Ma, Di, Pad, Me, and they start to control the breathing with the, with their minds, with the sound, and they say, why am I getting all uptight? I'm getting a headache. It says, let go. What do you mean, let go? Let go. You don't have to control it. Well, who's in charge? So the whole, the intellect that feels it's running your world and your life, that makes all the plans and so forth, this is part of the problem. You got to relax, let go, release your hold. My teacher has a wonderful verse when we'd start a meditation. He'd say, people, living beings, grasping everywhere, cover over the wonderful. Let go, release your hold, the wonderful revealed. So you can relax. You don't have to do anything here. Simply stop the busyness of the mind with this technique, and everything will be fine. So when you do the Om, let the breathing be natural, and you layer the sound over the breathing. Don't layer the breathing over the sound. Let the breathing be in charge. And you're following the breathing. You're following the breath. And as it slows, the recitation slows. And you will find that this can be a very, very effective technique of bringing the 10,000 things back to the one. Okay, questions on this? Some people actually recite longer mantras. For example, some of you heard the Great Compassion mantra? You know of this mantra? It's a long series of, originally probably Sanskrit, then rendered and transliterated into Chinese, so most people here would know the Chinese form of that. And it's a long series of syllables, 100 and, I don't know how many lines to it. 100 and what? 415 syllables run together in a string. So it starts Namo Hula Dano Dola Ye Namo Ali Baluji Disha Bola Ye Buddhi Satamo, go on like this until you get to the 415, then you start over again. Now when you start, it probably takes 10, 15 minutes. As you get good at it, you can do it in about 20 seconds, 25 seconds. So you memorize this mantra And you can recite the mantra in the same way, quietly over and over again. You enter the concentration and letting yourself be lost into the sounds of the mantra. And you don't even have to know what the mantra means, because it's not in English. So that's awfully dumb. No, it's really smart. This is the irony of this. To be really smart, my teacher said you have to be really dumb first. You have to be able to relax and let go completely, be like a dummy in this way, and then the wisdom comes up. It's in the quieting of the mind. So, if you want to memorize that mantra, you can use that mantra. And there was a session where we did that, where instead of going in, we recited the mantra. Dharma Master Chur was there at that time. She was the fish beater. She didn't beat the fish, literally. I mean, this is the fish. It's a wooden fish. And so the way you keep time, it's like a metronome, but it's, the old-fashioned metronome, human, instead of mechanical. And so you hit it. Namo hola dano dola ye namo aliya paluja disha bola ye puti. So she would hit it. We'd all go circumambulating. I didn't know the mantra at the time, so I was walking, trying to memorize it, tripping over everybody, following the book. But at the end of the week, though, you memorize the mantra. Then you sit and recite it together, and then you sit silently and recite it internally by yourself. And then you start again. So when I first came in, I had to ask her, please, could you slow down? Because everybody there had memorized it. This is like, and they go, I mean, just beating the fish like this, and I'm going, nam, nam, namo, and they're gone way down the road. So then, it was like, and you could tell, namo, hula, da, no. Being compassionate to me. So there's different ways to do this. There's not one that's better than another. That's all I'm going to say tonight about it. Now, obviously, this isn't the end. And as we get into the Han Shan material, he's going to talk about the next stage of this, because the saying is the 10,000 things return to the one. Where does the one return? In other words, you brought the 10,000 things down to a single-minded focus, but that single-minded focus still is not it. Okay, because it's still something. Still something. There's still that recitation. And as long as there's a recitation, there's still not complete, total liberation and penetration. You're still expediently trying to still the mind. So then the next stage is getting past even that oneness to a deeper penetration. And this gets into another level of meditation, but we don't have to worry about that tonight. I think the most important part is to understand some technique that you use, along with the sitting, the breathing, the recitation quietly, that brings the mind down. Now, do you have to be Buddhist? Absolutely not. This doesn't have anything to do with, quote, Buddhism, but it has everything to do with understanding your mind and exploring your nature. This is a technique that anybody can use. If you use it sincerely and directly, you can investigate the nature of your mind and your consciousness and really have a deep penetration understanding of it. Ultimately, liberate your human potential to an incredible degree. It's not religious. Okay, it's existential. It's psychodynamic. Yes, there's religious things associated. But those are all expedients too, if I might inform you. The pictures, the incense, the flowers, the altars, everything here is an expedient to bring us back to that ground. Meditation is another expedient. Meditation's a little more direct because you're not using all these other props. But it's still the same goal and the same system of techniques. That's why the Buddha said, all my teaching are upaya, fangbian. Merely expedient means to get you to return back to what is whole and complete, but you just don't realize it. They're all mnemonic devices to instill or reactivate memory of the true nature. Is this helpful? So you understand the theory here and understand that all these practices are nothing more than that. So this is you're back to that ground. And now it's just a question of practice. The more you practice, and the better you get with this, the more quiet and stillness you get, the more insight you have. The more insight you have, the more adjustments you make to your life. Your wisdom starts to reflect. You change your lifestyle. You make adjustments to your friendships, to your jobs, to your emotions, your relationships. Everything starts bit by bit to naturally get better because it's coming from direct seeing and understanding of things as they are, not from projections of goals or ambitions. but from just responding as you think. So as it gets more clear, you get more centered. As you get more centered, you observe more. As you observe more, you make choices and whatnot. And bit by bit, it says bodhi accumulates. Enlightenment accumulates. And it accumulates not because you're getting something, but because you're jettisoning what stands in the way of it. And it's a very natural process. So after you do the practice, you'll start to listen to yourself. And yourself is said there's a good knowing advisor, a Kalyana Mitra within you that you activate. It's your inherent wisdom. And it starts to give you feedback. And as you start to listen, you say, wow, it's so fast, it's so quick. I remember I used to be able to do that more, and I've covered it over. Sometimes it's called intuition, but that's not a really good translation for what's happening. It's your direct seeing unmediated by anything else. That's why sometimes this awakening is called dun. Bad translation, sudden. It doesn't mean sudden. All of a sudden, it means immediate, not mediated by anything else. Just direct. Okay? So, practice. That's the trick. The other thing is, and that's what we're going to be doing in this text as we go along, is you need to have a bit of a laboratory manual, if I might say that. Or what's the thing you get when you get a new device? The user's guide? Well, you don't get them anymore. You just get CDs you put in, or you go to some site and drag them down. But you used to actually get the hard copy things. I was on a catch-22. I got a device, but in order to activate that, you had to go to the site. But to go to the site, it had to be activated. So I was just frozen there trying to figure out, how do I do this? It went round and round. Anyhow, a user's guide, a user's manual for meditation is what Han Shan is going to be going over in this text. And he will say, when you do this, certain kinds of states, physical, mental, emotional, will come up in the natural process of this return. And then he gives you discerning techniques to use so that you can assess what the situation is, solve it, and move on. Okay? Now, this is one of many texts that are about that. So I would say once you have the basics and you have the practice, you still need a kind of discernment compass, because some of the states will be obvious to you and you will have no trouble with them. Like not doing it every day. That's an obstacle, by the way. So you say, oh, I heard him say, every day, 45 minutes, I'm going to do it. And then Monday you do it, Tuesday you do it, Wednesday, Thursday, it's like, Friday you go to that party, Saturday, I don't know, I think I'll do it on Saturday, and Sunday, whoa, and then, so that's, you got to be discerning and go every day. My teacher would say, every day you practice, every day you get 10 nuggets of Kung Fu. One day you miss practice, one day you lose 10 nuggets of Kung Fu. So he said, every day you do 45 minutes. You want to do an hour, do 45 minutes. Next day you want to do nothing, do 45 minutes. This way you make progress. So that's discernment right there. Do not let your lazy little, negotiating thing say, oh man, I don't want to, but tomorrow I'll make it up for 2 hours. No. You just stay with it. That's part of subduing of the mind. So the texts are very helpful here in terms of the obvious discernment techniques. But then you get to other things, internal things arise. He's going to go on and really map out some of the things that can happen. You think demons are arising, or incredible fears or memories or guilt about things you've done 20 years ago, 20 minutes ago, 20 lifetimes ago. It could all happen, and he gives you discernment, balancing things to keep the ballast, keep you on an even keel when this happens. Okay? So that being said, let's go into the text. We got 5 minutes left. But that's okay. This next section of text is really perfect because, and we'll finish this next week, because he goes into actually the first level of issues that will arise when you're doing it well. Issues will arise when you do it well. States will happen immediately as you do this well. He describes what they are, then he tells you how to deal with it. And that's where our movie's going to come in. We won't get to the movie tonight, but that'll be next week. Okay, so where are we? Okay, let me see if I got... I'm looking at my text. Okay, so the previous line was he's encouraging you to stay with it, just what I was talking about. Unwaveringly dependent, hold to it, be totally resolute. Don't take it up for one day and switch to the next day, just what I was mentioning. And fearing you're not getting enlightened, dismiss it because it's not profound enough. This is first level of discernment. Relax. Relax. Every day I eat, every day I sleep, every day I wear clothes, every day I do this. I don't calculate, is my food making me enlightened or better person? You know, we do a little discernment and you go on. So the same thing. Then he says, if you have this, if you keep like this, I want to make it clear that when a situation arises, you won't have doubt or misgiving. You can't be impervious to these states until you gain some skill in your practice. So there's a thing going on here. As you get skill, states come up. But as those states come up, because you have skill, you can deal with them. Each state you deal with effectively, you have more skill, and you keep moving on. Okay? And then he says, afflictions, and we've translated this as afflictions in English. Anybody know Chinese for this? Afflictions. Fan nao. And in Sanskrit? Klesha. So klesha is thoughts, feelings, emotions, habits that obscure or occlude bodhi. Anything that interferes with your natural enlightenment are these afflictions. They flood your mind seemingly from nowhere, and he's just giving examples. Suddenly, a lust or craving surges, and you become, or the opposite, you become despondent or moody. So you rise up with some craving or lust. For what? He doesn't specify. What could it be? Now, you can talk about other people's, don't talk about your own. I know so-and-so has a craving for. My first one was, my meditation says strawberries. I came to the monastery, it was summer that time in Wisconsin, the farm, we'd always go out and get strawberries. I came to the monastery, there's no strawberries. So the second day of my meditation, I'm going, all of a sudden the strawberry field. I visualized, and I could feel, my mouth was watering as I would taste those strawberries, and I thought, what is going on here? Well, because I didn't have them, and because I started to quiet my mind, that was the first lust that arose, strawberries. And the master was so compassionate. The next day, we went to lunch, and he came over to my place, and he said, look what someone brought, strawberries. And I go, well, wait, what's going on here? Okay, it could be physical lust. It could be passionate sexual lust. It could be lust for power. Not just worldly power, but spiritual powers. You might have that kind of lust. It could be lust for strength or beauty. Lust for immortality. Name them. Lust for money. Lust seems to have many objects it can focus on. Any others? Any meditation lust that came up? Lust for sleep. Okay. Lust for altered states of consciousness. Okay. And what he's saying here is that they seemingly come from nowhere. That's the first thing. They seemingly come from nowhere. But actually they're coming because you're trying to subdue the source of your mind, the deep layers of consciousness where these things stir. As you try to put them in harness, okay, I'm giving another metaphor from when I grew up. My pony in the field was completely fine until I wanted to ride it. And I went out with my harness to try to get, because I saw the movie. I saw Hopalong Cassidy hop on his horse. He even jump off a roof on his horse and gallop off. So I went out to get my pony. It had never been broken or trained, with my harness, 8 years old, and I'm going to ride him. Yeah, you're all laughing. Those of you who know horses, it didn't work. So trying to put the horse in harness brought about the horse's wildness. Trying to put your mind in harness, same thing. Okay? So some of you are saying, I'm from Berkeley, San Francisco. I don't know what it means to put a horse in harness. Any other analogies? Think of them. Anything you try to tame or subdue that's wild. How about giving your cat a bath? Try that sometime. That's perfect. Some of you have cats? You know, giving a cat a bath? Wear gloves. Up to here. Okay. So basically, when you go at the mind to subdue it, because it's been wild and untamed for so long, it's going to resist and rebel. So suddenly, seemingly from nowhere, you put the harness on. Lust or craving, despondent or moody, all manner of hindrances will assail or ensnare you. You'll be almost blanketed by these things. Don't move. Realize that this has nothing to it whatsoever. It's just a temporary response to this, and if you don't move, it will pass. I guarantee it, it will pass. But if you attend to it, if you get afraid and try to fight with it, you've given it energy and you'll be there for a long time with it. And if you give into it and just uncross your legs and run out and get the chocolate, strawberries, or whatever, you'll realize, oh, I was spooked. It tricked me. So he says, so much so that your mind might be exhausted, your strength depleted, you feel helpless. This is one of the states. This is not the only state. It's not the only state. Sometimes the opposite happens. You get blissed out. You feel really comfortable. I mean, you almost feel like you're in nirvanic heaven. That too, be wary of. And I'll tell you a story next week when I got to that place. And once I got past the strawberries, chocolate, and all that stuff, and the pain, then I got this really blissed out thing, and I thought, I've arrived. For sure I've arrived. And my teacher basically just hit me on the head and said, wake up. What are you doing? Last week you were down in the dumps over chocolate and strawberry. Now you're in the seventh heaven with your blissed out state. They're both false. Don't you know anything? Boom. Psst, brought me down again. Okay. Then it says, now, where we're going to get in tonight, what are these things that seemingly come out of nowhere? These are the seeds, and I think we put, bija, which is Sanskrit, of habituation stored for innumerable aeons in the eighth consciousness, called the alaya consciousness, and now they surface. Why do they surface now? Well, first of all, they surface all the time. In fact, these are this is the alaya, in a sense, is the engine driving our life. In other words, our intellect, our character, our memory, our prejudice, our tendencies, the way our lives seem to be folding are actually coming from seeds out of the eighth consciousness developing. Now, this is key to understand it. So normally what's going on as we go through our life is the flowering and the fruition of seeds called bija stored in the deeper layers of consciousness that then come and manifest. Even at birth, the texts say, the seeds give you the physical body you have. These are also the seeds. So in a sense, they're sort of like genetics in this way. They're genes that then produce all of this, including our thought patterns. This is very interesting. So these seeds in the deeper layers of consciousness, now they accelerate, and they're accelerated by the process of cultivation. So the normal slower process by which they manifest and activate as our life unfolds, now they become accelerated because we are putting attention and pressure on them. And the reason that cultivation does that, because when you do the practice, when you begin the practice of the moral cultivation where you're rectifying your conscience and you're concentrating your mind, then you're going into, without even trying, you're going to go into those deeper layers of consciousness, and because your inherent wisdom wants to come forth, it's wanting to push away those tainted seeds, those crooked seeds, as Verhoeven describes them. It's trying to sift out and get rid of those coverings, those seeds, so there's more pressure and attention on it there. The image that came to me, I don't know how accurate this is, but is if you have corn seeds, kernels of corn, and you just sort of lead them sit around, eventually some of them will sprout and da-da-da. If you put them in the hopper, you'll get popcorn. Okay, in a sense what's happening is as you begin this practice, not just of the sitting, but of the rectification of your mind, of the deep inner self-reflection process, those tainted seeds are going to surface much faster. You accelerate the process. So there's an old Chan saying, when your mind for the way, Daoxin, grows an inch, these demons, they call them demons, but means these afflictive states, grow a foot. So when your way mind grows an inch, these grow a foot. Get ready. The popcorn's going to hit it, And when your way mind grows a foot, the text says they're dancing on your head. It's like that's how it is. So, in the return, we have to go back through the seeds we planted that are the obstructions. So the bija are called seeds, and the alaya is called the storehouse consciousness. And by the intensity of your cultivation, you activate them or accelerate the activation of those. Now, this gets us into a lot of stuff here. Basically, at the core of this teaching, of this insight, when practitioners did this for millennia, they began to discover that the engine, the driving force of their lives, life after life, was mind and consciousness. That the body, in fact, was related to but driven by mind and consciousness. So the effort became to focus on mind and consciousness. To understand the mind in all its states was the goal, because the mind was the king from which everything else. All of our institutions, all of our architecture, all of the things that we see begin in the mind and then become manifest through. This is obvious to us. But at the deeper layers, this is how it works. So their attention went into this. As it went into this, they realized that the mind is a very fertile place. It's plastic, if you will, plasticity. And it can change and shape according to how we work with it. So that's why they started to get into cultivation of the mind. If you cultivate wholesomeness and goodness and focus, concentration, and so on and so forth, you develop the capacity of mind to greater and greater awakening awareness. If you shrink it down through greed and anger, negative emotions, and so on and so forth, you move it into something else and it manifests in a different way. But the plasticity is there. So they started to realize in the language they use, it's not literally seeds. These are metaphors. But they said, what's the driving mechanism here? And it's intention. Conscious intention. So with Cetana, it's called. C-E-T-E-N-A. With conscious intention of body, physical, with words, or with thoughts, we act. And that's called karma. Now, karma just doesn't mean what you do. It means what you intentionally do, not just physically or verbally, but mentally. And these acts carry with them energy, if you will. And when they're done, they set in motion possibilities that play back over time, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And so what the bija are sort of the seeds of those actions, verbal, mental, physical, that we plant. So right now, from the Buddhist point of view, the seeds of past plantings are coming to fruition. Okay, what we've done, thought in the past is now coming in various stages to fruition. The fact that we're here, this world, this time, born to this family with these physical conditions are all seeds that are blossoming in this life. And the conscious, intentional actions we're doing now are seeds that we're planting now that will then bear fruit later. So we're in this continuum of getting fruition from past seeds, planting seeds now that will bear future fruit, and so on and so forth. So the cultivation, the meditation, is to step into the stream of that activity, observe it, and start to change its direction through consciously getting a hold of intentionally what you're doing now. Meditation is the first phase of getting the necessary field of observation to see what you're doing now. Because most of what we're doing now is so fast, so habitual, so reactive, even though it's intentional, it's so fast we miss it. It's already done, said, or thought before we have any sense of what's happening. We're largely in a reactive mode. So to get into the mode that's more reflective, to have an opportunity to change that direction, meditation, the stilling, allows you to look and see what's going on with your seeding, your planting. Does this help a little? And again, there's nothing religious about this. This is very, very astute psychology. You can take issue with it, you can debate it, but their point was, if you do this and experiment, you will know for yourself that this is what's going on. Observe and try this and see, in fact, as you think, as you say, as you do, results come that shift your life now, and deeper things are affected that keep that momentum going ad infinitum. So the liberation that they're talking about is getting control over your destiny. That's liberation. So that you are actually intentionally acting in ways that produce really good, wholesome, liberating results and not things that tie you up. So the seeds are kind of like the residue that remains after you do something intentionally. And if you do it intentionally, repetitively, and this is the key, it becomes habit. And when he talks about habit here, he's talking about some of these seeds are habituations. It's not just a thought here, or a feeling there, or a word here, but actually the very formation of those are habituated by repetition over time. And these are the hardest ones to get a handle on. The ones that have become very ingrained are the ones that you need to put the most work, because those are the heaviest residue. So this alaya consciousness really means, anybody know the translation of alaya? It's Sanskrit. Sometimes called storehouse. Interesting. Where do you store? You put seeds in the storehouse. But what the other translation for alaya means, lying deep. That which lies deep. Meaning, these seeds are not just in the ordinary consciousness that we're using, but they're deep in the reservoir. I'm not going to call it the unconscious. It's not exactly the unconscious. But there's a deep reservoir of consciousness that is beyond our immediate accessibility, but is very powerful. So lying deep is where these seeds are. And that's why they're harder to get at. Now, to push this further, and then we'll stop for tonight. This isn't a real thing, okay? The eighth consciousness and seeds are metaphors. Because you're going to ask, where's the eighth consciousness? Well, it's just below the acceptable, well, no, I think it's on one of the cavities near the heart. Actually, when you die, they can weigh it, and it weighs 0.0 gram, No, it's not a thing. This is a functioning of consciousness. So the ancients said there's just consciousness, mind. However, to understand its workings, we have to talk about it in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the very obvious ones are the consciousness associated with the sense organs, ear, eyes, nose, tongue, tactile. But then there's an inner consciousness that's associated with discriminatory intellect thought. That's called 6. And then we go, and the eighth is the thalaya. So this eighth is this deep storehouse that lies deep. It's a function of consciousness along a continuum. Okay, it's not like a separate entity, and it's not like a separate consciousness. Now, what's interesting about this, when they asked the Buddha, well, what happens when you die? Isn't that gone? And the Buddha said, when you die, the first 5 go, associated with the sense organs. Obviously, the body goes. And the intellect, the discriminating intellect, that starts to fail. Who am I? What do I own? Who are you? You watch somebody die, that goes. What's left then is this eighth consciousness that has awareness, but doesn't have any sort of particular object. And it's this eighth consciousness, this very thin layer of consciousness, and they don't even have a word for it. Sometimes they call it a wisp. A wisp. And when you die, that is the last thing that remains of, quote, you. It's merely a repository of those bijas. Now, what happens at that moment when you die? The eighth consciousness, it leaves the body. Where does it go? Don't even go there. It doesn't go anywhere that has landscape to it. Okay, it's not a landscaped area. It doesn't go to Europe. It doesn't go to some other realm. It doesn't leave. At that point, the eighth consciousness knows the nature of reality, and it has no up or down, no beginning or end, no size or shape or anything. It's just there. There's awareness. And that is sometimes called the intermediate skandha body. And that's another metaphor. It's not a real thing. But it's that which then enters into a new physical form that becomes the next you. Now, I'm pushing this a little bit. You don't even have to listen to this. I'm just, for those of you who are interested, because you don't have to worry about this when you meditate, you just work on it and you'll figure it out. Okay? I'm just giving you a little theory. Because then death is not an end, but merely a transformation, and continuation occurs as that intermediate consciousness then reseeds itself into a new physical form and becomes a new you, and those seeds then continue. This is called going on, or samsara. life after life. So although it seems like you end, and physically there is a return of the elements to the elements, this consciousness can carry over. And that's why it says in the text, it's the first to come and the last to go. So at birth, or conception, or whatever, this consciousness enters and becomes the driving engine for the new you. And it could be a different gender. You could be a different being. You could be an animal. You could be a god, depending on what's going on here. That's why the Buddha said, wow, when he was meditating, he saw all this. He didn't think this, okay? He saw this. Very different. And he said, whoa, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been going round and round and round. And he remembered all his past lives. He saw them all clearly. Here was an animal. Here was a god. Here was a person. Here was a woman. Here was a man. Here was a king. Here was a beggar. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, he saw it all, and he thought, wow, and I'm like, how did that all happen? He could see how it all happened. These thoughts, these feelings, led to that. These led to that. Whoa. I mean, this is interesting, right? You could see why he could sit there for days going, whoa, whoa. It's like, wow, this is really interesting. And it's real. And then he figured out how it worked, and he figured out how he could be liberated from this to reach a state that was beyond, but not nothing. Okay, don't go there. But he understood that this consciousness then was the thing that went over each time. And it was there that if you could in your cultivation, you could pay attention, because that's where you could really get some leverage over it. That's where the deepest seeds were. Okay? So this is what we're doing. As you sit in meditation, your consciousness will start to go from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body to the deeper layers. You'll start to begin to access the seventh and eighth consciousness. And what Han Shan is preparing us for is when you do, this is terra incognita for us. This is unknown ground. We're normally not there, and we get a little lost. So he's going to give us compass and tools and maps to help us work our way into those deeper layers so we can understand what we're doing. It's a very pragmatic, matter-of-fact thing. It's not mystical. It only seems that way because it's so unfamiliar to us, we've neglected it for so long, that we need these devices to help us. But as you go in there, it becomes more and more familiar. You're really now into the ground of reality, and you're into the ground of your life. And then the text and whatnot will give you more and more help on how to work that through. It's really very interesting. But it's not metaphysical, it's not imaginary, it's not fantasy, it's not like, let's have an imaginary journey and I talk to you and you all go in there. No, it's real, okay? It's the most real. Because at the moment when you die, all this suddenly becomes obvious to you is nothing. It's not real. I know that's hard to take, but as you're sitting here tonight, not only are the people next to you not there when you die, you're not there when you die. All of that you think was me is not there. That's the meaning of not self, anatta. But before that, we cling, we grasp, we project, we imagine it's all me and mine, and then at that moment when it passes, the eighth consciousness is and none of this. It's faster than, my teacher said, after you take the piece of toast off the plate, the moisture is gone. That's how fast. And you think, yeah, I should have cultivated. Whoa. Okay, so next week we're going to go into this a little more, and then I have a segment from a Kurosawa film that will really illustrate what happens as these states arise and the kind of vigor you need. It's a really wonderful clip from a film called Dreams. So, any announcements? I hope this doesn't scare you off, but you know, it's good stuff, and it's pretty straightforward and natural. It's just not what you'd ever do on Friday night in Mormon.
I guess, an announcement.
Make it loud.
Okay, so we have a sign-up sheet in case people. We have a mailing list in case people want to get on it. Please consult. Like, we'll have a piece of paper and you can put your name on it.
And this Saturday, we announced last week that Shirbashi was going to come lecture, but she's actually unable to lecture this Saturday or tomorrow. So we'll see if she has a chance to come lecture some other date. So she won't be able to lecture tomorrow.
I don't think she'd mind. She's not coming not because she doesn't like Berkeley or the group here, but there was a death in her family, unexpected. And being who she is, she's going to do her best with her sister to take care of this, so that's what she's dealing with now. But before she goes back to Australia, I promise I will get her here for a couple of talks, some way or other. Okay? Great.
May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the three jewels.
They'll still come.
Still no.